Good afternoon. Welcome to the introduction to the Wife of Bath's prologue and tale from Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. First, let's get some historical or cultural background in an effort to understand the position that the wife of Bath is in during the Middle Ages, especially concerning the treatment of married women and attitudes towards sex. In the Middle Ages, women were mostly portrayed negatively as deceivers, as in Eve from the Garden of Eden, possessions, and not worthy of respect. As a matter of fact, on the hierarchy of who was, in command, you would have God. Underneath God, you would have men. Followed by men, you would have women, and then animals. So women were just considered to be right immediately above animals. So they were given very little respect. Laws were in existence concerning sexual relations between married people. You could even see some leftover laws about sexual relations that are in our modern society, but many laws existed during this time period that relegated that sex was for marriage only. So, in an effort to prevent men in this male-dominated society from falling away and from sinning in sexual matters, the way that they would do this, as far as the hierarchy, women were portrayed as sinful, seductive temptresses. So here we have the wife of Bath's prologue. In this time period where she would be considered a temptress, and certainly out of the ordinary, her genre will follow a dramatic monologue. She gives information about her past. In some cases, her discussion is a confession of the sins that she has committed. In an essence, her tale and her prologue are somewhat of a secular sermon. So sermon plus exemplum or examples equals her prologue plus her tale. So she begins initially with explaining her viewpoint on marriage, and then she follows with a tale that gives an example. Her prologue, which you will only have to read a part of, is really based in three parts. First, her name is Allison, or sometimes referred to in other circles as Dame Alice. She gives a justification of her attitudes towards sex and marriage. Her belief is not the norm. She does not believe that sex is only for marriage. As a matter of fact, since she's had so many husbands, and it's even inferred that she has had several other lovers outside of the husbands, you can see that she is certainly one member of the feminist revolution, and that she does not believe that sex is relegated just to marriage. She talks about her first three marriages, and then she goes on to talk about her fourth and fifth marriages, which are different from her first three. So in her prologue, her first three husbands are described as Gude, Enrique, and Olda. She liked her first three husbands because they were easy to dominate and control. They were kind to her, they had money, so that was of importance to her. And because they were old, again, they were easy for her to dominate and control. But as she moves up the ladder in age, she finds some more difficulty in her fourth and fifth marriages. In her first three marriages, Alice got what she wanted from her husband. She had money, she had possessions, she has love, though she doesn't really seem to love them. And she also receives sexual satisfaction, a topic that for most women was a taboo idea to announce. You have to keep in mind that Alice is on this trip with mostly men. She and the nun and the prioress are the only women who are on this trip. So for her to announce that really shows her character and how brazen and bold she is during the Middle Ages. In her discussion of the fourth and fifth marriage in the prologue, you can see a digression showing a more tender side when she is trying to have control of her fourth husband. She says, "In his own grease I made him fry." And then her fifth husband, Jonathan, is the only husband that Alice says she married for love and not for money. In the marriage, her fifth marriage, she struggles to gain dominance over Jonathan. He forced her to listen to readings on wicked women, which provoked her to start a brawl. You can see by this point in her fifth marriage that she was accustomed to having an independence. But finally, she was able to prevail, and she made him burn the readings and surrender his mastery to her. Now we begin the tale. In The Wife of Bath's tale, there are some literary elements that you should consider. Like many of Chaucer's tales, the wife's tale is told in the form of a narrative poem, so you should recognize that structure. Her tale employs humorous devices such as satire, parody, and puns, and sarcasm in order to subtly but persuasively support her argument for love and marriage. When you are reading The Wife of Bath's tale, consider this question. What similarities are there between Dame Alice and the tale that she tells? How is her tale an especially appropriate one for her to tell? So think of her situation. Think of her standpoint on marriage, her personal life, and then try to direct yourself to find some similarities between Alice and her tale. In her tale, we can divide it into parts. The first part of the tale denotes the knight's crime. And that crime is certainly a violent one, and it causes him to face some punishment, which leads you to part two. The question that the knight needs to answer is, what do women most desire? The knight eventually meets an old woman who tells the knight what women most desire is control over their husbands. The knight's life is saved, but the old woman asks for him to marry her. So note the knight's reaction to being asked to wed the much older woman as you try to guess the outcome. In part 4, the woman explains the term gentilesse. One dictionary definition of gentilesse, this is an archaic term, is its refinement and courtesy resulting from good breeding. That will help you in your understanding as you read the tale. Part 5 of the tale is the knight's final choice and his decision. And in part 6, you have the wife of Bath's final comments. In the closure of your understanding of the wife of Bath's tale, think about what is the lesson or lessons about love and marriage presented in the Canterbury Tales, the wife of Bath's tale in particular, and what similarities did you see between Dame Alice and the tale that she tells? Enjoy the story.